Here's what's coming up on this episode.
I think if you're producing safe work, you could probably produce a safe highlights video with a photo. You can have one image that is unique and different, and that one image is a singular thing.
Yeah.
Whereas a video, it's moments combined, and moments combined will feel differently than one singular image. I think what's important is that every frame I take is a considered frame. That's what makes the difference between an amazing picture and not. Show what you want to shoot.
It's a How to Shoot Hybrid podcast discussing topics around photography, videography and running a business. My name's Jules, and on this episode I'm speaking to a brilliant guest whose work I really love and admire. Erica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, thank you for that. Yep, I'm Erica Hawkins Photography. I've been a wedding photographer for 13 years now. And before that, my degree was media production. So yeah, that's kind of my very basic background.
That's brilliant. And we met each other, trying to think how long ago it was now. It was last year sometime, September? Does that sound about right?
Yes, yeah. For the best wedding ever. It was such a great wedding, wasn't it?
It was. It was a brilliant wedding. Emma and Vicky, is that right? That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that was the Barnes. What's the name of the venue again? Because it's obviously local to you. It's a bit of a drive away from my house.
The Barnes at Redcoats.
Barnes at Redcoats.
The Barnes at Redcoats.
And that was like quite a local venue for you, wasn't it? So you're located, is it Hitchin?
Yeah, I'm Hitchin, Hertfordshire. So Redcoats is like a 9-minute drive from me. So yeah, it's just around the corner. It's almost like a second home. So yeah, when I met you and you'd travelled quite far, I was like, oh.
And you were like, what are you doing here?
It's quite, because I always find, because I'm quite local and a lot of my weddings are in Hertfordshire, I've always been quite keen to stay close to home because of the kids. So when I find people like yourself and you've traveled, like hours, and you stayed in a hotel the night before, I'm a bit like, oh wow, that's like dedication. That's impressive. So yeah, it's really nice. Like, it's nice to meet other people further afield, not just Hertfordshire. So yeah, it was great to meet you.
Cool. And you. So I really wanted to talk to you for a few different reasons, because as we photographers, videographers, wedding suppliers normally do, when we have a little break and we have something to eat, kind of meal time on the wedding day, we have a little chat. And I remember you kind of telling me that you had done kind of like background in media and things, and we'd been talking and you'd been asking a few questions and stuff about video things along the day, because you were kind of interested in incorporating video and stuff and what have you into your business. So I thought it'd be a great conversation because of those things. But also, I really enjoyed talking to you because you were really lovely to work with, and your work, like, obviously I'd not worked with you before. So when I'm working alongside other photographers and I'm looking, I have a quick look at your Instagram, I look at your website, and I was like, oh wow. And it's not very often that I kind of see something where it grabs my attention, because you see so many wedding photos and videos these days. Everything's got a similar feel to it, or a lot of people's work has got a similar feel to it. So, but when I saw yours, I was like, that's really, different, as in not like wacky, but just very impactful visually, So yeah, so I just, and then I started looking at it more, and I'd seen, you kind of got some awards and things from like This Is Reportage and things like that. So obviously I could see, and then I started realizing, yeah, she's really, really into like the documentary side of things, which I'm really interested in. So I thought we'd have a great conversation. But before we kind of go into all of that stuff, tell me a little bit about how you got into this, how it all started, when if you talk about younger Erica and where things kind of started for you in the world of photography and filmmaking and stuff.
Perfect. Yeah, so I think I've always loved telling stories. Like, that's been a big part of who I am for as long as I can remember. Whenever there was any way of kind of filming at home. Like my mum used to hire a camera from her school because we
Yep.
couldn't afford a camcorder. So she would hire these massive, big on the shoulder cameras. And I remember my dad, he like did like a little video where he like clicked his fingers and made us vanish. And we were just kids and I was just blown away. I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best tool ever. We can do so much with this.
Yep.
And I kind of got carried away. Every holiday should bring this camera back and I would just like go up in my bedroom and just film loads and make stories. And it would be, they were awful. They were not good in any way. Like I would have like a little tape recorder and I would have like a soundtrack playing and me and my friends would like act out a horror film. And as I got older they would progress and I would be doing stop motions with pieces of fruit and things like this. And I loved telling stories with them and I loved just playing around and being creative. It kind of worked with my kind of instant gratification of kind of seeing something and making it, as opposed to sitting down and drawing or painting, which seemed to be a skill that like I can kind of do, but I'm quite impatient as well. And I think video just kind of was a format that just seemed to, I could really quickly see something coming together. So I think I knew that was always going to be a path that I wanted to explore as I became a teenager and going on to college. Very quickly I was like, yeah, I want to do media because it feels like it kind of ticks all boxes. And so I did media at college and then I went to university and did media again, but it was media production and management. And this was back in like 2001. So it's such a long time ago now.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2001. And my degree was like great. Like I got the chance to be creative. But back then, there wasn't that many different ways you could use a media degree. We didn't have social media then. We didn't, it was kind of like, okay, television or film. What do you want to do? And they were the options, let alone the path there to get into those things. Like that just seemed impossible. And I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. I want to make films, but that just seemed such a difficult path to follow. I didn't know anyone in the industry. I didn't really know. It was all very foggy and very hazy. And by this point, I was then, in my early 20s, kind of at a stage where I was like, well, I feel like, my parents are like, well, it might be quite unrealistic that you're going to become a film director. So maybe you need to get yourself a job. I was like, oh, if I really want to do this. And they were like, well, just to see what happens. And obviously those opportunities don't just present themselves. You have to be really dedicated at trying to find those opportunities and push for them. And I think I got a few bits of work experience in the television industry. And I kind of very quickly thought, this isn't the industry for me. I can't hustle. I'm just not like that. I don't have lots of connections to fall back on. And I don't feel comfortable gaining connections in the way that I thought you'd need to get into the industry. So I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to put this on pause, get a job and figure out what comes next. I think for a very small time I had a job, like an administration job, and that was for like maybe a year. And after that I was like, whatever job I do, it has to be creative. I'm not made for admin. Like I need to have some way of creating something, even if it's not in the TV industry or the film industry. I just want to be able to be creative. And I was really lucky that when I was in uni, one of my friends started up his own little production company, and he was basically working at Glastonbury, filming on stage, in a stage called the Left Field Stage. And he'd said to me and two of the friends in the class, because we were one of the top students. That sounds so stupid, but we were doing well. So he was like, do you guys want to come along and work for me? It would just be working at Glastonbury. It's no money, but you get to film on set.
Just working at Glastonbury.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's such a cool.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm not going to pay you. We're like, it's fine. We'd pay you for this opportunity. Yeah. So it meant that we went to Glastonbury. We got to camp backstage at this Left Field Stage and film the debates and some of the acts that were playing on the stage there. So that was like such a brilliant experience. It was like such high energy, really full on. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we were just winging it and having the best time. And luckily we got to do that. I think it was 3 years in a row. So by the time I'd finished uni, I'd kind of had that on my CV as some experience. And when I decided I wanted to look for a creative job, one of the jobs I'd seen, I was living in London at the time, was working for an art publishing company. And I was like, oh, I'll give it a go. And you could kind of see how many people had applied. I think it was like 3,000 people applied for this job. And I was like, let's just give it a shot. I kind of sent my CV in, and I think I followed it up with a phone call. And luckily, my soon-to-be boss she was massively into her music, and me having that Glastonbury on my CV, she was just like, right, let's get her in. And that was brilliant. And then so big, had I not have had that experience with the Glastonbury, I wouldn't have then got the job at the art publishing company. So then I was working for the art group. I stayed with them for 5 years. So art publishing is kind of like, we get to pick the imagery that gets kind of printed and sold in high streets. And so our biggest account was IKEA. We had people like Habitat or, Argos, all the different little smaller chain, Next, those kind of people as well.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of independent shops. So I was working with publishing. We were looking at what images were working well generically, which stuff was selling, looking at like really amazing artwork on a regular, like every day, just looking at images for 5 years. And I think that's had such a huge impact on me. And at the time I didn't really realize, because I wasn't being creative. I was in a creative industry. It was brilliant. I loved it, but I wasn't taking those pictures or making that art. But it was just drip feeding. It was going in every day. Like when you're studying stats for, the first year of my job was literally just looking at what was selling. When you're looking at what artwork people like versus what artwork isn't selling, like that's such a useful tool. And I didn't realize that at the time. I didn't realize how that would impact me in the future, that I would kind of just have I think just a good instinct for what visually is working and what isn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the art group gave me that kind of foundations. And after being there for 5 years, I think I was like, I'm getting to a point where I'm just not quite fulfilling that creative side of myself, and I was enjoying the surroundings, but I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be forever. And it was at that kind of point that I started thinking about what else could I do. And yeah, so it was a similar time. I think the art group wrapped up, the company went into administration in London, and at that point I thought, okay, do I want to kind of pursue art publishing or now think about the other thing? And I kind of knew that art publishing wasn't for me. I want to start making my own art in whichever way art. I didn't think of it as art back then, but I just knew I wanted to create in some form. And yeah, so I thought the first thing I need is a part-time job. I can't start something if I'm working full time. So that was quite important for me to recognize that, like, anyone that starts a business whilst they've got another bit, like while they're working full time, like hats off to them, because my headspace just doesn't work like that. So yeah, I knew I needed something that was like either 3 or 4 days a week that would give me 1 day just to focus on, or 3 days to focus on something else.
Yep.
So I looked around to see if there was any creative jobs that were part-time in London, and I was really lucky that I got another creative job working for a property marketing company. And that was just 3 days a week. And it meant 2 days a week I could figure out what this next thing was going to be. And it was while I was there that I kind of thought about weddings. And it wasn't like a thought that just popped into my head. Like my friends, again, it was at that point in my life where all my friends were beginning to get married. I was a bridesmaid like 7 times in a row, which was a lot. Over 2 years, it was like, oh, I did the same reading at a lot of them. And so I got all these dresses. It was brilliant. But it also meant I naturally just brought my camera with me because I was into photography, but I never really thought about it as a career. I always kind of thought, oh, I love film. Film's what I'm going to do. If I'm going to do anything, it would be film. And photography was like this thing that I just enjoyed doing. So when my friends got married and I was at this stage in my life where I was thinking about what I could do, and I took my camera along, not because I thought about, using it as a portfolio. It was just what I've always got my camera with me. And I started to take the pictures, and a lot of my friends were kind of like, oh, we really like your pictures. They're really different to what our photographer did. And I just kind of dismissed that as like, well, of course they're different. I'm your best friend. I'm going to be in your space in a different kind of way than a professional photographer.
Yeah.
And like that kind of stuck with me. Like each one of them was saying the same thing. And then I think someone was like, why didn't you think about doing this? And I was like, oh, I'm not sure. And at the same point, I think her brother-in-law was getting married and didn't have a photographer and was really relaxed about having someone come along. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And that was my first one. And I wouldn't say I loved it. I was petrified. I remember crying in the evening thinking I'd ruined all their wedding pictures, and that was kind of the beginning of me and my kind of massive imposter syndrome, which lasted for many years. But that's kind of how it started. And then
When,
luckily he had friends that were then getting married.
yeah, whenabouts is this then?
What year was that?
Yeah, what roughly how
So
long
we're
ago?
now at, so yeah, that was the year, that was 2011 that I
Right.
did that wedding. So yeah,
So kind of like
so that was my first,
14 years ago, yeah.
yeah. So on paper, I've been shooting weddings for a long time, but when you factor in imposter syndrome, having babies, like losing a mom, like there's lots of
It's
things
a lot
that
of
kind of,
life that
it
happens in the
doesn't sound quite
meantime.
as, there's a lot of life that happens. So yeah, so I'm quite conscious of being like, okay, it's a long time, but I'm not massively, I always think I'm not massively experienced with someone who's been shooting weddings for 14 years. You know, I think I've shot like 220 odd weddings, where some people would do that in like 3 years. So I'm a
No,
slow burner.
but I think when you get past, I might be wrong, but I kind of think when you get past 100 weddings, that you know, like when they talk about your 10,000 hours or whatever it is to become like an expert, when you've done like 100 weddings, you've done a lot of. It's not just the shooting on the day, is it? Because I see it
Yeah.
as you learn a lot through editing. Whatever
Oh,
you're
so much.
capturing, you learn so much through editing. You learn so much through researching things that you like, whether they be kind of different genres or whether it be people that are working in your space and you see their work, and all of this is informing your experience. And I think as well, based on all the kind of story that you've just said that built up to you actually picking up a camera at a wedding for the first time. I mean, I find that so interesting that you were doing the art publishing and you were talking about how you were taking all of that on board. So I mean, from like when you said about learning, were you talking about like statistics, as in you could see what imagery people were
Yeah.
drawn to? Is that
Yeah,
right?
literally, my very first job there was working with the sales team. So they would want me to present them a visual board, and it would literally be like, this week, this image has sold this many prints. And we
Right.
would see which images have sold really well. And then, and it would go down, and oh, this week only this one's not doing well. What's going wrong? Let's make sure we don't put more images like that into the range, because it's just not working. So it was kind of like understanding what's working, understand what we think's going to work, and making sure the right images are in front of the buyers so that they pick the right pictures.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was amazing, because I think what that taught me as well, it is understanding that what the masses like is very different to what I like.
Right.
So, for example, there was like a picture called Ullswater. You'd know it if you saw it. It's like a jetty going out into Ullswater, and that was like one of the top selling prints that we did. And there was another like contemporary artist called Jack Vetriano, and it's like a picture of like a couple dancing on the beach. It's like a painted picture, and there's umbrellas over them, and they would just sell constantly. Like they would do so well.
Yep.
And then you'd have some really interesting like street photography, and hardly anyone would buy that. And it wasn't what the masses wanted. So I think I found that really interesting, just understanding that there's artwork that the masses like, and then there's artwork that they don't like. It doesn't
Yep.
mean that's better or worse. It's just understanding that there's popular images and there's less popular ones. And actually what I gravitate towards is the stuff that is less popular. That all the thing, and especially within the company, we're a group of very creative people that I was working alongside.
Yeah.
The stuff that we liked often wouldn't be the stuff that would sell as well, because it's not for the masses. You're making prints for the everyday kind of person who doesn't mind just a very nice pretty landscape being on their wall. They don't necessarily want quite a urban kind of street photography on their wall, or a fashion. There's like a fine line in terms of what works and what doesn't work. So yeah, it was really interesting. And I didn't really acknowledge that experience. Like when I started shooting weddings, it's taken me years to even understand what impact the art group had on me.
Yep.
I didn't even clock it. Like I didn't even clock it as a skill or as like a unique selling point that I'd be like, oh, and I've also got all this experience in the art world, so I kind of understand about good compositions, and
Yeah.
it's never been something that I've kind of.
That's where I went to straight away.
Yeah,
I thought you'll have picked up
it took
so
me ages.
much from that.
Yeah, and that took me ages to even see that. And I think that's why I've spoken before about having imposter syndrome and having it to the point that it was very detrimental to my business. Those first, up until 2020, really, imposter syndrome was this huge thing for me, and it stopped me kind of pushing my business, because I couldn't get past the fact that I wasn't qualified. I didn't have a photography degree. I thought that's what everyone needs, and they're going to find out that I didn't have this. I had this wishy-washy degree that gave me all these different skills, but nothing solid. So I really felt like a fraud, and it really scared me. Whereas now, being in the industry for as long as I have been, and understanding that was quite a unique experience and unique skills that I've had, and I've
Absolutely.
never really kind of leaned into that at all. But yeah, it's only when you reflect upon it, isn't it, that you can kind of, it's quite obvious. Someone else would have been super confident and would have been able to promote that as this excellent thing, but I was a bit like, oh, it took me a while to figure that out. So.
But I can definitely empathise with that. I mean, there's quite a few things going through my head to ask you and talk about. But like I started my business 2017, 2016, 17. Well, 16 I shot my first wedding, but 2017, and I was. I don't know if we talked about this or I told you, but I was convinced that I needed credibility. So having been in the police for 13, 14 years and never done anything creative. So I was convinced that I needed to go and get a degree in photography and media to be kind of credible. And ended up like getting a really good grade and finished my course and everything. But I was like, I do look upon it as like the biggest waste of time in terms
that's really interesting.
Yeah, because I learned far more
do you know what,
doing
though?
stuff. Yeah.
But maybe what that gave you is not the awful imposter syndrome. Did you feel you still suffered massively from imposter syndrome?
I feel like at the time I was doing the degree and I was building the business. So this is kind of pre-COVID. This is kind of like 2017 to 2020. I literally finished that degree in the middle of COVID, like the first lockdown. So they just stopped us going into uni and we had to just do it all online. And that was like the end of the degree. But thankfully I'd already finished. I was just doing my like final bit of the dissertation, but I'd already done all of the practical work and stuff I had to do, thankfully. But at the time, I was super confident in what I was doing. And it's funny because, you know, I look back and I'm like, yeah, I was all right, but I wasn't, there was a lot of rough around the edges bits. There's a lot of finessing still to do. And I didn't know as much as I thought I did. And lots of people have that kind of view, you know, when they look back, they're like, I wasn't as good as I thought I was type thing. But like, I did feel confident then. I feel less confident today than I did then.
Yeah, but I think that's really interesting though, because I think that you kind of can think that it was a waste of money, but the fact that you felt confident, like I didn't go and get a degree in photography, like even though I had a degree in media production and management, I didn't value that the same way as I thought being qualified as a photographer, it would give me this special certificate and take away all my doubt. So I just had this huge, like really loud voice that always was you know, you're a fraud, you don't know what you're doing, and that definitely held me back. And I think had I had more confidence,
it would have been different.
Things, you know, it would have been different. It definitely would have been different. And I'm not saying this, I'm grateful for the chance to have learned and made those mistakes. I probably wouldn't change it if I could, because I'm where I am and I feel really lucky to be in that position. But I definitely think the lack of confidence and the imposter syndrome was a huge problem for me. So yeah, I think if you're not having that just take that as a
I
good
wasn't.
thing
I have it. I kind of have it more now. Now I've finished the degree and my business. I don't know. I think it might be something to do with then I was just pushing, and now I've got too much time almost to think about it and compare myself to other people. And because like now I'm established, it's almost like I can't think of something to compare it to right now, but there's plenty of things that I've heard in the past where people talk about, when you're building something, when you're climbing and you're on the journey, you're not really comparing yourself because you've got nothing to lose. And then as soon as you get to where you think you wanted to be, and then you start thinking about it too much because you start thinking, well, you've got too much to lose. And then you start thinking, especially at the moment, and we were talking a little bit about bookings and stuff before we started the episode, but I start thinking there's a lot of newer people coming to the industry over the last few years, and I can see there's changes in the industry, and I do feel like I've been distracted a bit on things going on in my personal life, rather than a few years ago I was just like business, and I'm going to build it, and I was all on the ball and moving forward, and I've rested on my laurels a little bit the last few years. So, but it's not a comfortable feeling, but maybe I need to be uncomfortable for a little bit, and I need to start, thinking about things more and pushing myself out of my comfort zone again.
Definitely. I've always kind of, because when I talk about imposter syndrome, I can kind of talk about it from a before 2020 and after 2020. And I think I see them as two different things. And often when I'm talking to people, I think you can think that because what we're doing is a creative, like we're making something that is like, we can make very small changes to our product and it will look different and it will give a different feel. And so therefore there's a level of subjectivity that comes with what we do.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes people think that imposter syndrome is when you're not sure you've done something right, or you're not sure you're doing it as well as you should. But I don't call that imposter syndrome. I just think that's like creative doubt. We work by ourselves most of the time. So I'm not certain I'm always going to make the right creative decision, but I don't think that's imposter syndrome now. Now I can recognize that as being a creative and questioning what decisions I make. And as a business owner, it's really important that we question ourselves and we think, are we doing the right thing? If my bookings are down, what do I need to do? But they're like, having any sort of doubt doesn't necessarily mean imposter syndrome, because it just means that it's important to look at, have a microscope underneath your work and your business and think about how we can do things better. And I think that should always be present. But when you've got imposter syndrome that stops you charging more than £600 a wedding, or means that you're not going to take on more than 5 bookings in a year because you're so stressed, that's like an irrational way of thinking about your work. And that's what my mindset was like for so many years. So I think I'm kind of conscious that I'm always like, well, it's different because I'm not over imposter syndrome. Like I'm over imposter syndrome, but that doesn't mean I don't have doubt about my work or what I could do better, or how my business should be moving forward. They're all really important things. But I see them as two different topics almost.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
Off course.
No. It's great. It really is. It's good to talk about it. So, what do you think? What do you think changed for you in your mind about the whole imposter syndrome and kind of your approach to things?
Well, this is one I've talked. I got cancer in 2020.
Right.
And that kind of changed everything. And I was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Why am I getting so caught up in my brain? And I was really lucky. My treatment was short. I'm fine. But I had kidney cancer. I had to have my kidney removed just before the pandemic. And I think that, coupled with the pandemic, it kind of gave me time to really think about what I wanted from life. And one thing that I felt really disappointed in was this energy that I had connected to my business, and this thought process that was just there all the time. And I kept on thinking, if my kids pick up on how I feel about my business and how I feel about my work, like, I'd be really sad that they wouldn't think that I had created something I'm proud of. So it kind of changed the narrative in my head a little bit, and just kind of told myself just to get over myself a little bit. stop dwelling on the things that you can't change, or move forward when you're not happy with something, or improve it. So that, I think that's been a massive change, a huge shift, which is why I often refer to pre-2020 and after 2020, because that was such a pivotal point for me.
I mean, that something like that happening in your life is going to completely change your perspective on many things, I imagine. And so COVID happening around that time, it's kind of, I could have assumed that it might have been something to do with that, but crikey. So do you feel as did it go away, as in, like, did you lose the imposter syndrome? Did it kind of just disappear? Or was it an active thing where you've thought, I need to change the way I think about this? Because, like,
No,
placing the
I think it
importance on
did.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it did disappear. Like, I didn't acknowledge it straight away as being something that was gone. It was just I had something else that was way bigger and way, like, the the scariest thing when you find out you've got cancer. And I'd lost my mum like 5 years before, so
Yep.
cancer and grief is a huge part of my life. So when
Yep.
I found out I had cancer, all I thought was, I'm not going to be here for my kids. I'm not going to be around. And I think when you fully think that, and there's a chance that that has happened, like, you're not going to suddenly go, oh, what about that job? Did I do the best? Like, you just don't think about it,
Yeah.
because for so much of 2020, I was just concerned about being alive.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then when I knew I was going to be okay, then it was like, right, it's the pandemic. What do we do with this? And I think the pandemic kind of lit a bit of a fuel underneath me, and in terms of, like, oh, I don't want my business to. I need this opportunity to prove to myself that I can make this business work. And bearing in mind, the end of 2019 was when I left the property marketing company, which had been my part-time safety net.
So you've gone full time
So
at the same time as well. Oh, wow.
yeah,
Talk
it was
about
quite the year.
a lot going on at once.
It was, yeah. So it just meant I had real things to worry about, real concerns, and it just, you know, I kind of want to go back and give old Erica a good shake and just be like, oh, you just spent so much time. It's like being a teenager when all you care about is the fact that you can't get your hair to go straight, or, and then you realize when you grow up, you're like, whoa, that's ridiculous. Why did I care so much? It's fine. I kind of grew up and I realized how silly it was. And now when I recognize it in other people, I'm kind of like, you do know that you're holding yourself back with the way you're talking, or the way you're thinking about your work. And often I find it in women who have children who are not taking their business, they're not valuing it in the same way that you need to when it's full time.
Yep.
And I think that it's kind of like they've got this huge imposter syndrome. They don't think that they're worthy of it being something that is serious. And I think that's one of the things that I've now reflected upon. And I don't think I would have taken on many more bookings even if I hadn't have had imposter syndrome. I think that there's like a bit of shame about being part-time or not doing more than, that 30 weddings a year. And I think that when you hold that on your shoulders along with imposter syndrome, it can really stop you thriving. So like when I see someone else and they're taking on like 10 weddings in a year because they've got a baby at home, I'm like, you need to you're doing amazing, you're doing really well. Don't think that you're not thriving. That's brilliant. And to recognize that even if you've got a small business, you're still doing really well, especially if you're a parent and you're doing it around small children. So yeah, I'm always kind of like, when I hear that voice in others, I just want them to know that they can do well, and they can, even if they've just got 10 bookings, to take them 10 bookings as seriously as if they had 50 bookings. Their business is just as important as someone else's.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, for me, but a business success should never be about number of bookings or a particular how we measure success is completely subjective and personal to the individual. Absolutely. And to the business, and that doesn't get enough consideration in this industry. Yeah, because I suppose it can't be measured, can it?
No, and it's different for everyone. And like I think that was one of the things that I definitely did do after 2020. I kind of told myself, what does success mean to me? Because I want my kids to look at what I'm doing and understand that I'm working towards something, or I might have achieved something. And I kind of redefined what what that goal was, and it was never money. It was never, oh, I'm going to get this many bookings, I'm going to charge this amount. For me, like, being successful is running a business, and this is a personal thing to myself, running a business that allows me to have enough time to spend with my family. So it became like a really obvious equation, which I'd never done this before, where I thought, okay, how many bookings can I comfortably take on where it doesn't intrude with my family life? And
Yeah.
I got my number, and then I worked out, well, how much fluff do I need in life? You know, if we want to have holidays and we want to have adventures, what does that figure mean? And it all became really easy. And then I was like, oh, okay, like, so I've got my number, you know, I know that if I hit 10 weddings a year, I don't need to find another job. If I hit 15 weddings a year, we're going to be quite comfortable. 20 weddings a year, we'll probably have a good holiday. And so I've got this kind of meter now where I'm kind of like, okay, this is what I'm going to work towards. And had I set those goals before, you know, when my children were really young, those numbers would have been different. They might
Yeah.
have been, you know, 5 weddings. But without setting those goals, I just didn't realize I was doing well. I just didn't see myself. I just thought, well, I'm not doing 50 weddings, so I'm not successful. And
Wow.
so now I've set them. And when I tell my kids, I'm like, I've got my numbers, guys. I've hit my numbers. And I'm like, we're going on holiday. You know, I try to talk to them about my business so they can see that I'm really proud of what I've created. And I'm not this, you know, I try to hide the imposter syndrome voice and the negative voice, and I try to show them that, yeah, I love what I'm doing, because I genuinely do. So yeah,
That is, I didn't expect the conversation, especially at this point, to actually go there, but that is such a brilliant piece of business advice. Like, anybody who's listening to, if anybody's earlier on in their career, maybe they are experiencing some of the imposter syndrome feelings like you've explained. Maybe they're not. Maybe they think they're doing really well, but actually they're not potentially doing as well as they think because their business is consuming them and isn't as you've just described. I think you've got to have those personal goals, and the personal goals do have to be personal to you, because comparing yourself to somebody else's measure of success or what somebody else is working towards or wants isn't helpful at all, because we're all, like, I at the moment used to do this with my wife. We worked together. This was the sole household income for quite a few years. It had to sustain that. Bearing in mind, we both left careers in the police, so we both used to have decent salary. You know, they weren't amazing, but they were decent salaries. You know, and that was the goal, was to replace that. So that's kind of what the goal was for many years. The kids were young. We wanted to be able to kind of have that freedom to look after them. Then my wife now has gone back into work because it's what I think she realized, that being self-employed, running her own business was not the right thing for her and her kind of well-being, as well as like other things that were happening. So she's gone back into work, and that has changed the dynamics, and it's changed now what success is in my business. You know, I needed to scale my workload down because I'm doing more stuff with the kids and more stuff around the house. And I'm adjusting to that, but my business has got to adjust to that. And I've maybe, you know, like it's funny because maybe I've been thinking a little bit the last sort of year, I'm feeling a little bit not like I'm doing as well, because I've purposefully scaled the business back. But like, I need to think of it differently, because it's not about that.
Absolutely.
I've done it on purpose. 100%. I've done it for a reason.
Definitely. And I think this was my mindset when I was thinking, oh, I've only got 5 bookings this year, the year I had a baby. And then I was like, now I can see, it made sense. I needed to only have 5 bookings. I purposely turned bookings away because it's like I had the foresight to know what the right balance was, but I didn't have the understanding to kind of pat myself on the back for that and go, well done for not burning out. And I think sometimes there's a trophy given for burning out, and if you've managed to avoid it, then you feel like
you weren't working hard enough.
It's like, oh yeah, you haven't really achieved what you need to burn out to recognize success. And I don't think you need to do that. I think you can have the foresight to think, my family is the priority, and this is how I need to juggle the numbers this year. And I think that's brilliant. And I think by doing that and recognizing what those numbers need to be,
Yeah.
you can just be kinder to yourself. I think that's the most important thing, is not to, so when you've got the negative voice, it's not healthy. So any way that you can feel much more positive about your numbers that you've set, and I think that's it, is if you purposely set the numbers to be, but lower than 10 or higher than 10 or higher than 20 or 50, you set those numbers for a reason, and then you can celebrate them, or you can figure out what you need to do to push yourself to get those numbers. But if you don't have numbers, you're just aimless, aren't you? You kind of just, there's no way of driving down that road.
Yeah, and there's no point in using somebody else's numbers. Again, I think when people it's when people use numbers of bookings and nobody actually knows what everybody, not only do they not know what's going on in their lives and how they run their business and how much time it takes them to do X, Y, and Z, but they don't know what they're going on in their personal life, and they don't know actually what they're charging. And so when someone says, "Oh, I do 50 weddings a year," and somebody else says, "I do 10 weddings a year," the person who's doing 10 weddings might actually have a better business than the person at 50. But no one really is talking about 100%. That. They're just talking about, it's almost like a badge of honor. I've done loads of weddings or whatever. So yeah. It's personal to everybody, isn't it?
Definitely. Absolutely.
So we'll rewind a little bit. Tell me a little bit then. You talked about film, and that was where your creative passion, was, but you ended up doing a couple of wedding photos and stuff for friends and people you knew. And then that's kind of how that took off. So did you not fancy doing wedding videography? I'm guessing 2011, wedding videography would have looked very different to what it does today.
It did. I definitely thought about it when I kind of decided to do weddings, to give it a good go.
Yep.
I was really torn. I kept on thinking, should I be doing videography,
right,
or should I do photography? And I was kind of umming and ahhing about them both for a while. But bearing in mind, I was working for the property marketing company, and their job was all photography based. So I think I probably was slightly leaning towards, okay, this is something I know. I'm learning about, editing pictures, retouching, raw pictures. I was learning a lot more about photography. And I think it'd been a long time since I had really kind of dabbled in videography. So I think photography felt like the one that it just suddenly became like, no, let's give this one a shot now.
Yeah.
And I think I felt less excited about telling a wedding story. Like, the thing with what I loved about film is creating a story and using film to tell that story. But when it comes to wedding videos, the story kind of feels like it's already there.
Yeah.
Which is kind of different to how I think about my photography. But I feel that I wouldn't know how I would approach doing a wedding in my style now, because I would want the wedding video to be unique, whereas with a photo, you can have one image that is unique and different, and that one image is a singular thing.
Yeah.
Whereas a video, it's moments combined, and moments combined will feel differently than one singular image. So yeah, I feel like the story's already set with video in a slightly different way than it is with photography. So yeah, photography won that battle.
I guess I do understand what you're saying there, because yeah, you could say, well, with photography, with wedding photography, the story's already set. We all know they're going to get married. There's going to be certain points in the day, but I suppose, and I'll say at this point, if you haven't checked out Erica's work and you are listening or watching this, you should go and have a look at her website and social media, because I totally understand what you're saying. The way that especially, I mean, I imagine if I looked at your full gallery, as with most people's, there's going to be a lot of photos from the day that are fairly
100%.
generic and everybody's taking them. But the ones that you show and the ones that are in your portfolio, they are very much, like and I'm going to ask you some questions about this, but I feel like you've really thought about it. And even if you haven't completely kind of manufactured the image in your head before you took it, you've got an idea of what you want it to look like, and you're just looking for the opportunity to do that. So, and because of that, they're not generic wedding photos. They are literally telling a story in that one frame. So can you tell me a little bit more about how did you get into doing the documentary style, and how did you develop that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it took me a little while to find my photographic voice, I should say. I kind of look back at some of my work that I took from that very first wedding, which is an interesting viewing. But
Everybody's
there's
is.
pictures, there's it's like, ooh, that's fun. There's images in there that are what I would say are my style, which are authentic, interestingly composed, non-set up. So there's definitely those moments in the gallery,
Yep.
but they're quite small. There's not many of them. And then there's a whole heap load of very generic images, bride looking down at her bouquet by the window, and groomsmen walking to the cameras, all that kind of stuff, which I thought I needed to do a lot of to take wedding pictures. But even at that point, I was still inspired by good wedding photographers, and I knew that there was a genre that was outside of the typical, generic wedding photography.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see myself as being something that would ever fall into that. Again, that's partly the imposter syndrome. But so I kind of lent into making sure that I was kind of ticking the boxes, and I was doing, and my clients knew that I was inexperienced. I was very honest, and I kind of said, I've never shot wedding before. So they had a lot more kind of influence over me. They would send me lists. Oh my goodness, some of the lists I would get would be like, I'd like a picture of my dress on the back of a chair. I'd like my shoes by the window. And I'd be like, right, okay. And I'd spend, my day ticking off this list. And after a few weddings, I'll be like, okay, I'm not going to ask for a list because I'm getting really distracted going against these lists. And,
Yeah.
I would do fewer and fewer pictures of the shoes by the window and the dress hanging up. And so I kind of knew which pictures I liked. And again, I think this came back to the art group, where I instinctively knew the pictures that I was drawn to. And then there was all the pictures that my couples would like. And when I say the term generic, I don't mean that in a bad way at all. It's more what I would say the mass market, the stuff that lots of people like. And I think that as the years have progressed, I kind of think of it as like a iceberg. Like the stuff I show on Instagram is like the tip of my galleries. And over the years, like those first weddings, maybe there was like a few pictures in that very tip. And then as the years have gone on, there's a few more and a few more, and the iceberg has kind of gotten the generic stuff. There's a lot less of it underneath, but ultimately, I can't take a whole wedding gallery that looks like my Instagram, and I would hate a client to book me thinking that their whole day is going to look, every frame's going to be massively unique, because it isn't. And I'm really careful that my couples know what to expect. I send them galleries, and I think what's important is that every frame I take is a considered frame. That's what I try to do. And I always kind of ask myself, what am I trying to get from this picture? Even if it's someone having their makeup taken and it's a very normal moment, a normal scene that you get at a wedding, I still kind of think about, what am I wanting from this frame? What's this frame going to do? Is it just going to show the bride she's getting ready in this space? And if it is, that's not a bad thing. But how am I going to tell it? Do I want to go wide? Do I want to make sure I'm, shooting nice and wide? And do I want to incorporate all this stuff, or do I not want to incorporate it? Or can I shoot through the dresses and do something creative? So I'm constantly thinking about each frame, and I think that's what I would say. Yeah, my composition is very considered, because I'm wanting the gallery as a whole to pull together. And the interesting kind of more unique images, they kind of anchor around other moments that are well composed. And then there'll be stuff that is very much for the couple, that they're going to love, but I'm less excited by. So yeah, I think coming back to your question, I think my style has always been there, always been present, but as I found my confidence, I've just had the ratio of how much is in that gallery has just increased. I felt a bit more comfortable putting more images in. I found it really interesting last year. So some of the wedding competitions that I do, so I do Fearless, this is Reportage, and Nine Dots. They're the kind of the main ones that I do.
Yeah.
And I entered a picture to Fearless, which I took. It was my fourth wedding I'd ever shot. And it was two bridesmaids on a fence planking. That's how old the picture was, because they were planking. I don't know if you remember planking.
I do remember planking. Yeah. I think I've seen it actually. Did one of them fall off?
Yeah. One of them falls off. So that was the fourth wedding I'd shot.
Right.
It might have even been my third wedding. I was charging £600. So I was super cheap, really new, but I was still looking for those moments, and I was still composing them in a way that I thought was interesting or necessary to tell that story in that way. So, but in amongst their gallery, you'd have still had quite a lot of portraits, which you wouldn't have as many now, and you'd have still had probably her looking down at her bouquet. So there was still a lot of the very generic stuff, but yeah, it's become less and less as my confidence has moved on. So
Yeah. So would you say, and the reason I asked this question is this is personal, as in I'm interested because I like that style of photography, but I struggle to get the, I like look at sort of your portfolio and some other people's portfolios that are so good at documentary stuff, and I sort of think, well, have they got the opportunities because the couples see the stuff and then they attract the right couple and then that leads to further opportunities, or is it your eye and your intentionality that gets better, or is it a combination of both? What would you say in terms of if there's
I'd say
people
it's
that
a
really want to get into
combination
that?
of, yeah, I would say it's definitely a combination of them both. I think one thing I've always done, and this was taught to me, so I did a workshop in, I think it was 2018 or 7 or 19, a guy called Alan Law who runs This Is
Yeah, I know
Reportage.
law school. Yeah,
I
law
did
school. Yeah,
his, yeah, it's brilliant. So I did his, it was the very first workshop I'd ever done. And, he often says, like, show what you want to shoot. If you don't want to show loads of portraits, don't show loads of portraits. So you need to show what you want to shoot. So I'm really cool. Like with Instagram, you'll rarely find couple portraits
yep,
because I actually do like shooting couple portraits. But for me, it's my way of filtering clients, because the people that love portraits, they're not going to book me. So there's no point in me putting portraits on, because then they might book me and then they'll
yep,
get, other pictures that they don't like. So I want to show people what most of their gallery is going to be, the authentic, unposed moments. And that's what my Instagram account is.
yep,
What I would say is that most of my couples, once they inquire, they seem to know straight away what they're going to get. They're kind of reflecting back to me what I've already kind of put out there in terms of Instagram or on my website. They're kind of echoing what I'm looking for. They quickly say, I don't want hardly any posed pictures. I just want to enjoy the day. All the kind of things I kind of say in my branding. So I kind of know that the filter's working. Every now and again, I'll get a rogue inquiry and it'll be like, oh, we're having a really romantic wedding. I want it to be, I think someone once used the term a princess it. And I was like, oh my goodness, oh, I'm not sure how you snuck through, but I don't think I'm the right photographer for you. But yeah, so more often than not, I'm getting clients that are straight away on the same page as me. And I think by showing them what I like shooting, they're recognizing what their gallery potentially is going to look like. And they're not seeing a whole load of pretty couple portraits. They're seeing guests laughing. They're seeing, people being daft. They're seeing little tender moments that are obviously real. So yeah, they've got a good understanding. I do think the more, I think our industry is interesting. I think that lots of high energy weddings tend to be the ones that can win awards. And I do think that the more you show of that kind of stuff, the more then you get bookings that are high energy, the more then that you win those kind of awards, and it can go in a big circle.
yeah,
The wedding we did together was probably one of my most high energy weddings I've ever shot. It was brilliant. I loved it, but it was quite unique in the sense that most of my weddings aren't that kind of high energy. I have lots of weddings that I would say are very normal, is the wrong word because that makes Vicky ever seem like they're not normal,
no,
but
but
they were
it was
so
unique.
unique.
It was a unique day. Yeah,
Yeah, it was everything I wanted as a photographer in terms of making my job as fun and as, easy peasy as I possibly could want it, and different things happening. But most of my weddings aren't like that. Most of my weddings are very, again, I don't want to use the term generic because that feels unkind, but it's just they're just normal weddings. And I shoot at the same venue loads. I'm at Redcoats more often than not,
yeah,
and I've got another few venues that I'm shooting at in Hertfordshire. But for me, it's as long as I can connect to the people, as long as I feel comfortable with the people I'm shooting, then every wedding feels different. And I think that's what I try to show on my Instagram, is that I'm not trying to attract a type of couple. I'm trying to just attract people that like my photography, because then they'll let me do what I do without me kind of worrying that I'm going to deliver pictures they don't like.
Yeah.
So I don't think I've got a type, but I definitely think if you want to shoot high energy weddings, then you need to show high energy weddings. And if you want to shoot portraits, yeah. So I think it's important to find what you like doing and just show that, really.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Did that answer the question?
It did. And there's a couple of questions that I've got. So I have massively struggled with that in terms of showing, you know what, and maybe it's because I never really got 100% sure on what I wanted to shoot. So how did you just know this is what you wanted to shoot, and so it was easy to pick those images and start showing them, and then all of your branding just fell into place? Or did you ever feel, as I have at times, a bit conflicted, like, well, I do like different aspects of weddings. I do, like you talked about the portraits, like I don't know why, but I show a lot of portraits on my website and stuff. I tend to post, if I don't post on Instagram anywhere near enough as I should, but I tend to post, I end up posting portraits, and I'm like, why am I posting these? I don't even, these aren't really, this isn't what I connect with. So how did you go about that?
Yeah. I think, again, it was after Alan's workshop, I kind of thought about what I liked, and I like a portrait, but I don't love a portrait. Yeah. So I just show what I love. Really, show what I like is the wrong word. Show what you love. So the stuff I put on Instagram are shots I really love. And I kind of figure that, like, I've never bought, like, I have a really small Instagram following. Like, for someone who's done quite well in terms of different awards, I'm like, how come some people have got, 50,000 followers or 11,000 followers, and I've got 2,000 followers, and I've had work in the National Portrait Gallery, or what. I can't gain followers. Most of my followers are photographers, but I just really struggle with Instagram. But what I do know is I've never posted pictures for likes. I've never worried about the fact that a picture I love might only get a small number of likes. I'm fine with that. I don't mind that.
You've done it for yourself.
Whereas I've got friends that are like, I've done it for myself, and I think I know what pictures I like, so therefore I just show the ones that I like.
Right.
Where I've got friends who are like, oh, if I don't put a portrait up, I don't get as many likes. If I include a really pretty golden hour picture, I get loads of likes, and so therefore you're led by, you think the likes are the thing that's the most important. Whereas for me, it's not. It's just I just want to use Instagram to show what images I enjoy shooting. And that has definitely then meant I'm attracting people that are on board with that. And I know that I filter out a lot of people that wouldn't want me. So I think if you don't know what your style is, if you're not sure what pictures are singing to you, that's harder. But if you do know, and you're worrying that people won't like it, then I would just say just get it out there,
right?
Because you won't know. And if you just follow what is a very safe path, then you're just going to get very safe
generic
weddings
stuff,
and they're gonna be very so I think just kind of start putting it out. Don't take too much notice of your likes, and just because then I love looking back at my Instagram and seeing all the pictures I like. I'm like, that makes me feel good. I feel really proud when I look at that. Whereas if I put work on that I was less proud of, I'd just be a bit like, oh, okay.
That's so good to hear, though. Because you, 20 minutes ago, you're talking to me about imposter syndrome, and then now you just said like you love looking back at your Instagram because obviously that's exactly what it's. Thank you, because you've just reminded me what I should have been doing for the past few years, which is actually just what I connect with, what I like. I should have stuck with that, rather than, thinking, well, what's the industry doing and what do people seem to like, and being so confused and conflicted between those things. Because that's where I've probably sat for the past few years post-COVID. Before that, I kind of knew what I liked and I knew what I was doing, and business did seem a lot easier, because I was very much video back then. I did some photo, but not as much photo back then, and it was mainly video. And everybody really liked the cinematic kind of slow, type videos. And I really liked doing different things. I liked it to be based around the couple, but I liked a bit more energy and a bit more personality. That didn't always lend itself to the kind of slow cinematic, because not every couple is
100%, yeah.
romantic and lovey-dovey in it, and they want that sort of thing. So I kind of loved doing that, and I loved it when I got those. And they were always my favourite weddings, and they were always my favourite couples, and I always really like got on with them, and they always sent me really great kind of like feedback and reviews, and I enjoyed the wedding art. They ended up making the portfolio, but then I'd get this mix of clientele, and then I'd think, well, I don't really know what I'm supposed to post, but you have just, because I connect so much with your work, and then just having that conversation, that's really solidified it to me. It's reminded me what I should have been doing. So thank you for that.
Definitely. No worries. Yeah, no, I think it's important. Definitely important.
So back to kind of, let's go to Emma and Vicky's wedding. There was one particular shot that you got about some drinking shots.
The shot.
and so I was interested to know, because I could go through and pick so many images from your portfolio and ask you, how did that work out? What's the story behind that? But I was really interested because that we were shooting the same thing and we were stood near each other. And it's very different when you're shooting video to photo, because obviously I can't edit in the same way, and I can't necessarily get the exact same perspective. You got a very unique perspective on that. And so how would you come to that? Did you think about that before it happened? And just to sort of, for anybody who's listening and has no idea, because I can throw the image up on the screen, but to kind of explain it, all of the guests were doing a shot, weren't they? Towards the end of the ceremony. It was a celebrant-led ceremony, so it was very relaxed. They'd done all the formal bit, and then they got everybody poured a shot, and then they took a shot, and you were stood near the couple. So tell me how, because the perspective you got on it was, I mean, I don't know if you've won an award for that. I think you should.
Do you know, I've won every award for that image, which is ridiculous. I've got a Fearless Award, I got a This Is Reportage Award, I got a 9 Dots Award. So that one is a really good example to talk about, because that was
go on then. Talk about your thought process.
So if you remember, so during the service, they were giving out these little bottles of, I can't remember what the drink was, but because we were slightly elevated during the service, and obviously being a single shooter, I tried to walk around and get as many different angles as I can. I don't want to just stay in one spot.
Yep.
So I jumped kind of down, and I got some close-ups of the family getting their shots. I kind of could see them all being handed out. And as I was down there, I start to think, where do I want, they're gonna do it all at the same time. It's leading in that direction.
Yep.
Where do I want this picture? And it felt like an instant, obviously I want everyone. I could have just focused on the couple. I could have focused on Vicky and Emma and have them doing a shot. But to me, the thing that was interesting was that there's 100 other people doing a shot as well. So straight away I knew I needed to get back up on the grain store and shoot from up there. And then as I'm kind of going up, I'm thinking it would be really great if I can also have Vicky and Emma in the frame as well. So which then straight away means I then have to I need to get my camera up high, and I need to kind of pause. I don't know if you remember, I was like, oh, this is hurting my back. I was there for a while waiting for the moment to happen. And I was thinking at one moment I had both sets of the guests, because there was an aisle down the middle. So you've got one side and the other side. And I had Vicky one side and Emma the other side. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're going to line up. They're going to do their shots at the same time. And they're going to be framing the people behind them. And I was like, this is amazing. And inside I was getting excited. I was like, this is so brilliant. And I had my camera there and I'm waiting. And just as it happened, I think it was Vicky turned from her position and she was facing the crowd, as opposed to having her side profile like Emma had.
Yep.
She just turned, and my heart sank. And I was like, fuck. I was like, and I knew it was still a good shot, but it wasn't the moment that had just kind of played out. Had they had both side profiles with all the guests, I was like, that was the shot I was wanting. And the shot that happened, as weddings are a live event and you've got no control over it, someone moved and it changed it. So I kind of like, I was less excited about it because I knew it hadn't quite panned out, but I was still excited. I wanted to kind of get home and have a good look. And as that wedding played out, there were so many moments that were brilliant. So I got home. I think I was exhausted because it was such a high energy wedding and there was so
Yeah.
much going on. But I kind of jumped on and started to pull together their first look. And I got to this picture and I was looking at it and I was like, oh, it's really annoying that Vicky turned her head. I've just got this little blob and what can I do? And I am a big fan of cropping. Like I crop a lot of my pictures, and this is what I can do that videographers couldn't do. Often I will use cropping as a way to reframe an image that because there's a story that I want to tell, and if there's distractions
Yep.
and bits going on, I just get rid of them. Like I just crop them out. Cropping is like a skill that I think people sometimes too embarrassed. Like it's fine to crop your pictures. It's as photographers, cropping is a little magic thing up your sleeve. And if you're not cropping, sometimes that's what makes the difference between an amazing picture and not. And, so I'm a big fan of cropping. I just
Yep.
want to get that out there. So I cropped. I looked at the picture. First of all, I edited it and I was like, yeah, it's good. And then I just thought, no, I'm gonna see what happens if I get rid of Vicky's head and just have this side of the guests.
Yep.
And I did it, and as I pulled it in, and I was like, oh, and then the feelings came back. And I was like, oh, I love it again. And I called my husband. I was like, come and look. And he was like, oh, that's awesome, well done. Because I have to show him all my pictures that I like, unfortunately for him. So I was really chuffed with it, and all of a sudden, it had gone from being a picture that I felt wasn't quite what I wanted it to being something I absolutely loved. And yeah, and that was how I did it. But it definitely, yeah, the moment I saw the moment, I thought it was going to pan out to be something epic. It changed. I disappointed. Then getting home and working on the edit, and it just brought it back. So yeah, that's kind of the story behind that one.
Yeah, and it is I mean, so many of your images are stand out, as in they you look at them and you stop scrolling. But that one, I remember seeing it, and I guess I don't think I've ever been in that situation before where I was capturing exactly the same thing, and I've thought, why the fuck didn't I think of that? Like I just kind of captured it in this generic, and I kind of I watched. It's slightly different because obviously you think you did it in black and white, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you've got so much more room to kind of draw things out when you edit a photo, because you can mess with the contrast
100%.
and stuff a lot more. But
yeah,
it just I remember seeing it and I'm like, I just filmed it, and I'd filmed it near you, I was near where you were, so I was getting the perspective from behind, and I've got other cameras as well technically that I can kind of look at and draw images from. But I just remember seeing it thinking, oh, the way that you'd angled everything, and then the way that you'd got, and there's the crowd, there was like these leading lines coming from the crowd, and then you could just tell that the couple were in this corner of the frame, but you weren't focused on them. And it was telling, you didn't have to, I was there and I know what happened, but if you hadn't been there, it was better than being there, let's put it that way. So it was, like the image was better than the actual thing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those images that I feel really proud of, because I knew 100% what I wanted. I knew that I wanted them, their silhouettes framing, and because of the way that the light was falling, they were almost a shadow. So
yeah,
I think that those kind of quick decisions where you're like, okay, who am I exposing for? Is it the couple? Because if I expose for the couple, it would have changed how bright the background would have been, and therefore, so that's the kind of offset. It's making those very quick decisions. I shoot everything manually because I think it gives me much more control. I'm quite quick at making those decisions about who am I exposing for, and quickly make. I don't trust my cameras to get it right, so I just do it myself. And knowing that I didn't need to expose for the couple, I didn't need to see all their features because I had this good shape, which is important when you're doing a silhouette. So those kind of things had already played into. I think that's why I'm really proud of that picture, especially because, although it was cropped differently, the intention, it would have just been the symmetrical version of what we had.
Yeah.
But there would have been two brides, so it could have been even better. But that for a moment, I had both the brides, taking a shot silhouetted against two different, parts of their guests. So yeah, I think it's making those quick judgments. But I know, like, I think when you're a videographer, I think this is why I prefer photography in terms of a format for weddings, in terms of being a shooter, not as overall. I believe, like, I love editing my pictures. Like, I think that's your second chance to be creative and to make something unique and magical. I know a lot of photographers don't enjoy editing, and I do find it like there's a bulk. I've got my highlights every wedding. I've got like 300 images. I'll massively enjoy editing. And then there's 400 that I'm like, okay, get these ones done. But those 300 I really enjoy, and I love seeing what I can do to a picture to elevate it to a different level. And that was a good example of, it needed work, it needed tweaking, it needed changing. And I don't care about the fact it's cropped, because I know there's some snobbery in the industry about, it needs to be
these
straight
days,
out the camera, it needs to look, and I don't buy into that. So
these days with all the AI stuff and people just putting things in and taking things out of images, I don't think cropping's a concern at all. I think
it's never been something that's bothered me. And I just think if I can make an awesome picture by cropping it differently, crop. I think, and my couples are going to appreciate the fact I've done that. So
there's so many there's so many things different directions I could go off, but just to kind of move it on from there. So like you just said then about the editing, because again you enjoy editing the photo because you've got that level of creativity and that second chance of making the picture. So interesting, because like these days, you're right, most photographers, like everybody's trying to get editing off their workload. They're trying to find someone else to do it or something else to do it for them. So to kind of hear that you enjoy doing it, that's really good as well, because it says a lot, doesn't it, that you maybe there's a lot of people out there that aren't thinking, oh, I'm not fully happy with what I do, what I create. But it's not, sometimes you've got to spend that time. I certainly think you've got to learn editing, because like you see how you're making the mistakes in camera as well, and that influences your learning.
I have to say, I use AI, so I still use Imagine AI, or Imagine, whatever they're called,
to do like the bulk,
edit. So, but what I do is that just, it's almost like nowadays I'm paying just for my preset, my look to be as good as it can be, and then comes what I call the proper editing, which is just making sure it's, so I would never pay it to crop my images or straighten them like that. That's what I want to do. So it's become a very expensive way of editing, because I send it off, it comes back, it all looks lovely, and then I go for each picture and edit
and change them.
And tweak it to the ridiculous amounts that I think makes a difference, but probably doesn't make any difference.
No, but it clearly does if that's you're making those images.
It does, yeah.
And it is so. So like to segue into kind of the awards and stuff, because obviously it's making a difference, because not everybody is getting that recognition from making these amazing unique photos. So tell me a little bit about that. When did you start entering for different awards and things, and how has that impacted your business?
Again, Alan Law, I tell him and he gets all embarrassed, but he was the reason I entered any competitions. So bearing in mind, I kind of mentioned that I had huge imposter syndrome. So when I did Alan's workshop, which was the first workshop I'd done, he obviously is the founder of This Is Reportage, so he talks about the benefits of entering awards, not in a way of like, enter my award. He just kind of says, you can, and I always thought awards were for professionals, and because I didn't have,
you didn't feel like you were a professional.
No, I didn't. I genuinely couldn't. I felt embarrassed telling people what I did, because I felt like I was lying. I was like, I'm kind of a wedding photographer. It was such a huge thing, but like back then. So when I did Alan's workshop, and he was explaining how, winning awards is great for marketing. It's a good way of selling yourself. If you feel, if you're not feeling confident and you've won an award, popping up that you've won this award. There's a ton of different bodies that offer awards, and to make sure that your work is in line with the people whose work you're entering competitions for,
Yeah.
and that anyone can enter awards. And I think that's, for some reason, that hit home. I was listening to him and I was like, I could never enter. I just didn't think I qualified. But I came away from his workshop and I was like, okay, well, I don't feel like I've got any weddings that are good enough to win awards. I had a picture of my son that I'd taken when he had chickenpox in the bath, and I was like, oh, but that picture's pretty good. I can kind of recognize that's a good picture. Let me see if there's any family awards going on. And I was just kind of Googling different awards, and the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize came up. And I have to be honest, I didn't know a ton about the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize before I entered it, but it's like one of the most prestigious photography portrait awards that you can enter. And if your work gets selected, it ends up in the National Portrait Gallery. And so I was just kind of like, let's give this one a go. I'll send this picture off of Jacob and see what happens. And yeah, like roll forward a few months and I got the email saying that I'd been selected and that I was going to have a portrait in the National Portrait Gallery.
Which is
blew my
crazy
mind
because you're like, oh, I've got imposter syndrome and I don't feel like worthy of it, and
unreal.
And then you've just kind
of. It didn't take that away though. It didn't change that feeling, and I think that's what I've, again, another thing that I've realised. Like when my first, I've mentioned this before, like so they have like this big open evening where you can we'll have the opening night of the exhibition, and you've got all the artists kind of walking around and there's some press there and everyone's kind of looking at their work, and the most amazing evening to be part of. Is like such a highlight of my career. But the first 15 minutes of that experience, all I was doing was criticizing my image, and I was like, what, this doesn't belong here, it's not very good, what, this is a mistake. And I realized in that moment what I was doing, and I was ruining the highlight of my career.
Yeah.
And I kind of recognized how powerful that negative voice was. So I kind of like, stop doing this, like enjoy the moment. And I was able to park it. I pushed it to one side and loved the experience, kind of came home, and then like the voice kind of comes back and it's like, well, you didn't win that for your wedding work though, did you, Erica? So it's just a picture. You just you're a mum, you just got a good shot of your kid in the bath. Starts kind of shouting loudly in my head again, and that's why I recognize it as being a real detrimental thing, because my mental health, although I'm more often than not, I'm a super upbeat and positive person, and even when I'm on an off day, I'm more cheery than I am like downbeat.
Yeah.
But that voice was always there, even being quite a happy person. That voice was always kind of whispering and kind of just not giving me the opportunity just to enjoy photography. So yeah, I kind of said to myself, well, you're not really a good wedding photographer until you start winning some awards from like This Is Reportage or Fearless, or if Alan will ever ask you to be on his podcast, that will be the point I can stop thinking about your imposter syndrome. And
so you've done all those things now.
I have done all those things, but they at that point, but they weren't. That's what I'm trying to say. They're not the things that took my imposter syndrome away.
Right, really.
And that's what's really, which is But I got a This Is Reportage award, and almost straight away, I think I won 2 in the one of the first in the rounds, and I was like, oh, but that was quite. And again, it just starts again, and I realised that it was all about my mental health and how I felt about my self-worth as a photographer. It was nothing to do with the achievements I was getting. They weren't, I think. And had I not have had, I'd like to think it would have gone anyway, but had I not have had cancer, I probably still would be doing it, and I would just be finding other reasons to kind of take that value away from whatever award I'd won. So yeah, it's a bit of a blessing that that voice has gone now, and I can celebrate my wins a bit more. But it's something that I think, just because you win awards doesn't mean that you haven't got a really strong negative voice in your head. Because as well, awards they're not all that. Like, I think the industry, we know that it's a bit smoke and mirrors, really. I think there's a load of people who are amazing that don't enter awards. So you never, like, I don't buy into awards in the same way that I think it's important not to put anyone on a pedestal in the industry. And I think it's something that has been beneficial, is just seeing us all as we're just photographers. We do things differently, and I might win some awards for this, that, or the other, but it's not really that relevant. It kind of helps me sell to my clients, but it's sad when you hear what awards can do to other people and how it can make them feel
Yeah.
quite low about themselves if they haven't won, or to not have the confidence to enter. So I think it's always important to, I love them, I love winning them, but I also don't get caught up anymore if I don't win them, because
Yeah,
for
you
every
don't
award I've
rest
won, there's
everything on
10.
it. It's kind of,
No.
you've
Yeah.
you've kind of, you take what you take. Well, it sounds like you take the good parts from it and don't get too caught
Yes.
up in
100%.
the hype, which is good.
Definitely, because the year before last, like, I didn't win any awards, so I think I won one, and I'd entered every one, you know, religiously again, and I hadn't picked up anything. Oh well, I hadn't done anywhere near as well as I'd done this year, and you know, and I think that if I'd gotten really caught up in my own thoughts about that, I'd have been really like, oh, but I don't, just because, again, life's too short and I'm not going to worry about if I've won an award. And I think what's important is not devaluing the work that you love if it hasn't won an award.
Yeah.
Because there's images, some of my favorite images have never won any awards, and I still love them, and I'm okay with that. And if they haven't resonated with those judges, they're just wrong. They don't know what they're doing. I'm joking.
I'll be honest. You know, on the topic of awards, I'm always intrigued by kind of how people feel about them and entering them, because I haven't really ever done that, and I think I've not done it because I do think I'd be one of those people that if I didn't win anything, and not that I'd have to win all the time or anything, but if I felt like I was trying to win and I didn't, that would negatively affect me. So I kind of avoid it to be like, oh, well, it doesn't matter to me. But I think it probably does, really. But I'd rather not tug at that thread.
No, I get that. And I do think you need to have a thick enough skin. You need to be okay with not winning to enter them, because the negative mental kind of impact they can have on you is not worth it. And I think if you're not feeling strong enough to be okay with the fact that chances are you probably won't win many of them, then don't bother. Find a different way to lean on whatever you were trying to get from them.
Yeah.
And know why you're entering them. Like, understand, like, for me, it's a little bit about not needing to, I don't feel comfortable selling. Like, I'm not a good salesperson. I just hope my pictures, like, I'm like, there's the picture, did I book me? And then if they don't, then I'm like, oh, look at this award I won, ding ding.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, okay, let's have a chat then. So I kind of lean on it for those reasons. But also I find it quite the process I enjoy. I enjoy looking at my work in a much more critical way. I enjoy looking at my work kind of like how I used to at the art group, like thinking about, oh, is this work does this one kind of speak to lots of people or not? And I think sometimes our jobs can become so, you shoot the wedding, you edit the wedding, you deliver the gallery, you shoot the wedding. It's quite nice to just
you don't
add
ever reflect enough
in
on
the
that.
mix. Yeah, whereas especially with photography awards, I don't know how it works with videography. I don't know if there's many chances to enter awards, because you'd almost have to watch. Like, it's very quick to judge a photography award. Like, there's, you know, I know that I've been a judge on different things before, and, you know, you look at a picture, thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing, and you move on. And I don't know how that would work with videography.
Much more complicated, and there are some, and there's more industry stuff now, you know, recognizing and kind of allowing for filmmakers and videographers to enter things. But for quite a long time there was TWIA, but again, it's not that it's not judged properly, but again, it's I think it's changing. But I think for a long time, I felt like there wasn't much chance of you getting very far unless you had a particular style. That's what it seemed like. It seemed like all of the kind of the winning entries, if you like, they all had the same style. So I think it has changed though over the last few years. But I just, you know, I've not thought I'm going to enter, because I've just been focusing on other things. But to go back to the benefits there. So have you noticed that's been beneficial for your business in terms of like the marketing and things like that with the, you know, with the awards?
It's a really difficult one to quantify, really, because I think you don't really know. It's not an obvious thing. Like, if I was to ask my couples, oh, did any of you book me because I'd won awards, I'm pretty certain they would all go, oh no. However, I think it just gives them a level of confidence. What it has helped with is my price. Again, I think if you're a little lacking in confidence, you might not feel as comfortable putting your price up. So often I'll tell myself, okay, so I entered Wedding Industry Awards, and I kind of told myself, if I do well in that, if I come home with anything, then why don't you put your price up?
Yeah.
And I did a similar thing I kind of said, if I get myself onto like the Fearless top 100 or something, maybe it's time to review your price. So that's kind of why I do it, because it gives me a bit more confidence to charge. And I don't think I'm massively, I charge 2.5 for a 10-hour day. So I'm not top end, I'm not bottom end, but I'm, kind of probably a smidge above average. But I find pricing really difficult. So for me, the awards had given me the confidence to put my price up, so I could and I think it just kind of gives clients a bit more like, okay, she's got these badges on her website as well, so maybe she's worth it. So yeah, that's. But I don't think it has. It's really difficult to know. I don't know what impact it has. I can say that, like, I've got my number. I've got 24 bookings for this year.
Yep.
So I'm a little bit above the number that I want. Whether that's because I've got awards, I probably would say I don't think it is. I think it's probably just relationships I've got with different venues where I know that they feel happy to recommend me. I think that's been my biggest tool, is that the venues enjoy working with me, so they recommend me.
So I was going to ask about where do you find your bookings come from? Is it that the main sort of place? Is it recommended by other
mainly referrals
venues and stuff? Yeah.
Referrals from venues, referrals from photographers, and referrals from people that have been at a wedding or have seen my weddings. They'll make up a chunk of my bookings, and then the rest is Google and Instagram.
And I do think that. Sorry, I was going.
I was going to say, when it comes to the awards, I think awards might not mean that much to my couples, but they probably do mean a bit to venues.
Yeah.
So I think when a venue wants to recommend someone, if they've just seen that I've won an award, it just gives them a bit more confidence about recommending me for things.
Absolutely.
So I do think, again, I'm guessing it's something that's not discussed, but I'll have people that work at those venues going, well done, and giving me the thumbs up. So I know they see it, and I know and then they're the ones that do recommend me. So for me, I think it just gives a bit more confidence to people when it comes to either recommending me or booking me. So yeah,
absolutely, you're right.
There'd definitely be more of a positive.
If that's where the majority of your inquiries come from in your bookings, are coming from personal recommendations, of course, those people seeing they see 5 photographers, 10 photographers coming to the venue on a regular basis. They're all nice, they get along with them all well, but then Erica's just won X amount of awards there, and it doesn't it? It's going to automatically, kind of just push you in front of other people, and so that's a really good takeaway for people. If they're thinking, well, should I enter awards, and everyone's got different reasons to do it, but that is a perfect one in itself, just there.
Good.
So talk a little bit then. I know that you offer a highlight film option as well as your photography. Obviously, we've spent a lot of time talking about photography, and you came from the kind of background of filmmaking originally. So how long have you been offering highlight films alongside your photography, and what's the kind of business model with that then?
So I only offer highlights videos to weddings that have a smaller guest count than 50.
Okay.
So as I've said, I'm a single shooter. I shoot nearly all my weddings by myself. It's really rare if I've got anyone with me. So for me to do both well, it's almost impossible. So if someone's having a small wedding, this kind of came about during COVID, where I had people going, oh, we'd really like some video because, half my family aren't coming, and I knew I could do video, and I was kind of like, oh, shall I offer it? And I kind of was really torn between saying, oh, I know I can make videos. I know I can do videos. I do videography for like corporate clients. It's a skill I know I've got, but doing photos at the same time, so I wasn't too sure. So I kind of tested the water, and a few of the couples that got married during the kind of big restrictions, they had like 15 people at their wedding, and I was like, I can do this. I think the unique moments are going to be they're not going to be as happening all the time. So it would just be a much slower paced wedding.
Yep.
So yeah, I started off, I would, my highlights video to begin with kind of had a little bit of audio for the speeches, and then it was just set to one piece of music. I'd film lots of different clips. I think I probably could have made a good, 45-minute long video, the first ones that I did. And I felt that the level of photography was still good enough. But what I found, so I don't do it that often because most of my weddings are more than 50. And I would only offer it now if I was working with a second shooter. And I would actually lean on my second shooter to do most of the videography rather than myself.
That's interesting.
Because I just don't think I can get those shots that are important to me and film at the same time. But for a smaller wedding, I can. And I think I listened to one of your previous podcasts, and I do think there's definitely a place where, I've kind of used that term generic quite a bit. But I think if you're producing safe work, you could probably produce a safe highlights video easily alongside. And that will probably be good enough for a lot of people. And I think that I definitely think I think what people have come to expect from a video is very different as well. Like we had a time when, like you mentioned, these lovely cinematic, like really glossy films. Obviously isn't necessarily for everyone, but that almost became a bit of a generic video. These like slow motion, big epic opening scenes, like the speeches over the top. And I think we're kind of living in a YouTube and Instagram world where people are quite happy with less. They don't need it to be quite as high end as that, and they just want a video. So I think if you're trying to capture that market, you can do both. But personally, I do think if you're doing both and it's just you, you're gonna bring the level down for both of them.
Yeah. That's it. I kind of when I look at your photos and I think because I can do both, and you're right. I think I do think of it as safe. I definitely know that if I'm just doing video, I only do kind of less than 5% of my weddings will be just photo. But when I'm doing just video, I do know that I've got a lot more time and room to be creative with it, so that they tend to be my video portfolios. And then the photos I kind of try to think about how I would get in the mindset of shooting like you, and that's the thing. I can do safe photography, and I do think that there's a lot of space for parts of the day that lend themselves more to photo anyway, and parts of themselves that lend more to video. But going outside of that safe thing and just trying to really get amazing photo images and being in the right place, and also then worrying about the video is very difficult. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure, because I have been thinking about how things will change and how you can incorporate video into things, but maybe in a slightly different way than you're creating a highlight film or a ceremony film or a speeches film, but like actually thinking, do photo clips. So this is something I wanted to ask you. Do you ever see any of those amazing photos that you've captured and they're award winning because they're visually striking? Do you ever see any of those as a moving image?
Oof.
I know I've slipped that one in to trip you up. Sorry. I just thought of that.
No, I don't. I don't. What, in terms of like, could I visualize it as a video?
I just don't know. Do you think that you could? Do you think if you captured? I guess a lot of people who are shooting in that similar way. Do you ever shoot on like burst mode so that you kind of getting lots of frames and maybe there's one that just caught the right expression? So like if you were shooting almost stop motion-ish, does that ever? Do you ever like think, I'll just experiment with that?
100%. Yeah. No, I remember for a while thinking I'd love to stop motion a wedding and have like cameras set up and they're time lapsing at different parts of the day. And I think if I was going to do videography, I think this is why I've not done videography. I would want to do it in a unique way, which doesn't mean, I think with photography, I found a way to tell a story. So I found a way to capture moments interestingly and creatively. And I kind of know what I'm doing with that. I think if I wanted to do videography, I don't think I would creatively be satisfied doing a highlights video that would be safe.
Yeah.
I know I can do it. I think I can come up with a load of different ways I would shoot a wedding in a fun, like in an Erica way that would sing
Yeah.
to me. Whether clients would want it, I don't know. But
Well,
yeah,
why
I
haven't you
can
done
imagine
that?
lots of different things.
Why haven't you
Because
done
I'm a
that then?
photographer. Because I'm busy. I'm busy taking photos, and I can't. I think I could go to someone else's wedding, not as a photographer,
Yeah.
and play and do something and see what I come up with. But I think with anything I do, I need to do it first to know I can do it. I couldn't just suddenly charge and say, "Oh, do you want to take a gamble on me doing your video?" Because it might be bloody awful. I should just stay in my own lane and do photography. But yeah, I think I can see how I could see how I could do both. I can see how I could be creative with videography. I just don't think for me to do both as well as I'd like to, I would have to really change my way of working, and I'd have to find someone that I could work alongside that I fully trust. And I think that's and I know some of my friends who dabble in hybrid and do videos and photography, and they've definitely felt that they're not giving themselves the time to be as creative because they're learning and thinking about video. And it's, I think weddings are so fast paced, and
Yeah.
if I'm thinking about setting up a other camera to quickly go and press, and then it just would be missing things. And but like I said, for a lot of people, it's like I'm talking back to that Ullswater picture. Loads of people love safe, and loads of people will buy safe, and it doesn't mean that there's not a business there for that. It just wouldn't work for
what you
me
do,
because I don't want yeah.
This is the thing. This is what I have been. This is the world I've been stuck in for the last few years, was business or what I actually want to do. And it's been a great conversation because I've recognized how I have gone towards this safe because I knew I could do it. I knew I could do photo and video together, and I knew that the market was increasing for it. So all I've done is focus on, well, how do I create that product that everybody's going to want? Not what do I actually want? What do I, I have, and it's been interesting because this is why I wanted to interview people, because I know whenever I have conversations, it kind of either asks questions that needed to be asked inside my own head, or it brings answers to the questions I've had. So yeah, it's been really good to get that.
Wrong in, I think it's important because I think when your business is so reliant in terms of like what you're putting back into your family, like what you can give your family, it's going to be so much harder for you to take a gamble and then start kind of making your creative soul happy. Like, and if there's a part of your brain that's thinking, oh, if I start getting creative and producing work that I love, I might get less work. I think that's what you're worrying about, isn't it? You might get less, but you might not. You might get more. You might be able to get more clients that love what you're doing, that lead you to, it might keep you in the industry longer because you're happy and more fulfilled. So I think you just got to try it. I think you can, you just got to give it a go, show what you love and see if it speaks to people that are your kind of people. And if you can, experiment a bit more, if that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And just,
No, that's really good. I really appreciate that. I know we've both got kids to pick up from school. So
I know.
You're looking at the clock thinking, me too. I'm like, oh, crikey, this has gone on longer than I expected. No, it's been great. It's been a great conversation. We should have started it earlier.
Oh, good.
So a couple of quick questions to wrap up that I just like to ask everybody so you can answer really quick, obviously, and then the kids aren't waiting for us. First one, biggest tip you would give yourself if you could go back to the start of your business?
Oh, this feels obvious. Just believe in yourself. Yep. Believe in yourself. Believe in your business. Take it seriously. Yep. That'd be it. Short and
Brilliant.
sweet.
That's a great answer though, because that's what people need to do. Something you wish you hadn't bought.
A gimbal.
Now, did you buy a gimbal?
£500 one for one job.
Did you? Was it a commercial
thing? There was so much dust. I don't even know. I did it for one job that I didn't, and I was like, oh, this is, I don't know what we're doing. And it's been up in the loft for 4 years. So yeah, gimbal.
I bet you that's quite a common answer if we asked loads of people.
Oh, definitely.
You can put one wedding trend in the bin. What is it?
Can it be all trends? Does that count?
Anything.
I just think.
Oh, you don't like any of them?
Okay, yeah. I just think trends. I think when you shoot authentically, it's not really a trend. So you don't really follow trends. So I just put them all in the bin.
That's a good answer.
Bin them all.
It's a cop out, but it's a good answer. And the last one, you're getting married again. You can only choose one thing to document your day. Is it photo, video, or... No, you can't have both. Sorry, I was about to say both. You can have photo or video. Which one is it?
Photography.
No, I can see. Yeah, I can see that. Brilliant. Right, Erica, we're going to go. But where can people find your website? What's that?
Yep. So ericahawkinsphotography.co.uk. Same on Instagram, just Erica Hawkins Photography. Yeah, they're the two places that you can connect with me, or send us a message, or just come and look at my pictures.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Erica. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great year.
Thank you for having me.
So that's it for my conversation with Erica. What an episode I think it's been, packed with great insight and loads of takeaways for you. It's time for this episode's song recommendation that you can find on MusicBed. As this episode, we haven't been talking about slow cinematic stuff, and we mentioned the wedding that Erica and I worked on together a few months ago, which was Emma and Vicky's super upbeat wedding, which needed an upbeat and fun song to go with their wedding film. So here we go with Live for the Moment by Georgia West and the Underground. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for joining us. Catch you in the next one. Bye.